I held his hand at my wife's funeral. Brandon was my sister's only child, and after she passed when he was 12, I helped raise him. He called me Uncle Will, but I was more like a second father. That was 26 years ago. The morning of Margaret's funeral, Brandon stood beside me at the graveside, his hand steady on my shoulder as they lowered her into the ground. I remember thinking how grateful I was to have him there. My own children lived overseas, Emma in Australia, David in England. They'd come for the funeral, stayed a week, then had to return to their lives. I understood. They had careers, families, responsibilities. But Brandon was here. Brandon lived just 2 hours away in Kelowna, and for the first few months after Margaret died, he called every week, checked in, asked how I was managing. I was managing. Barely. Our house in West Vancouver sat on a quarter-acre lot with a view of the Pacific that Margaret and I had saved 30 years to afford. She'd designed the garden herself. Roses, hydrangeas, that Japanese maple she babied through every winter. Every room held memories. 42 years of marriage doesn't just disappear because someone's gone. The silence, though, that was new. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. like always, reach for her, find empty space, make coffee for two, pour it down the sink. I kept her gardening gloves in the mudroom, couldn't bring myself to move them. Brandon noticed. During one of his visits, about 4 months after the funeral, he sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped him with his homework, where Margaret had taught him to make her famous butter tarts, and said something that should have been a warning. Uncle Will, this house is too big for one person. I'd laughed it off. I'm 64, not 94. I'm managing fine. I know. I just worry about you. These stairs, the yard work, the maintenance. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one found you for days? I have neighbors. I have friends. But wouldn't it be nice having family around? That's when Stephanie spoke up. Brandon's wife of 6 years, a real estate agent with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. We've actually been thinking, she said, examining her manicured nails. Our lease is up next month. Rent in Kelowna is insane right now. We could move in with you, help take care of the place, keep you company. I looked at Brandon. His expression was hopeful, earnest. The same look he'd had at 16 when he wanted to borrow my truck. I don't need taking care of, I said carefully. Of course not, Stephanie jumped in. But think about it. We'd split utilities, help with maintenance, cooking. You wouldn't have to eat frozen dinners anymore. And honestly, Uncle Will, it would help us out too. We're trying to save for a down payment, and rent is killing us. Brandon added, just temporarily. 6 months, maybe a year, until we get on our feet. I should have said no right then. But the truth is, I was lonely. The house was too quiet. And this was Brandon, the kid I'd taught to fish, who'd helped me build Margaret's garden shed, who'd delivered a beautiful eulogy at her funeral. Let me think about it, I said. Stephanie's smile widened. Take all the time you need. They moved in 3 weeks later. I gave them the master bedroom, on the 2nd floor, the one Emma had used growing up. It had its own bathroom, plenty of closet space. Margaret's and my bedroom was on the main floor, and I couldn't imagine anyone else sleeping there anyway. The first month was fine, better than fine actually. The house felt alive again. Stephanie cooked dinner most nights. Nothing like Margaret's cooking, but I appreciated the effort. Brandon helped me fix the deck railing I'd been putting off. We'd have a beer together in the evenings, watch the Canucks game. I started to think maybe this arrangement could work. Then small things began to change. Stephanie started rearranging the living room. Just freshening things up, she said, moving Margaret's favorite reading chair to the basement. I found it there a week later, covered in a tarp. The fabric was getting worn, Stephanie explained when I asked. I thought we could donate it, make space for something more modern. I brought it back upstairs that night. More things started disappearing. Margaret's photo albums from the bookshelf, her collection of vintage teacups, the watercolor painting her mother had done. I put them in storage, Stephanie said, in the crawl space, for safekeeping. The house was getting cluttered. Brandon said nothing during these exchanges, just looked at his phone or found somewhere else to be. The second month, they started making changes I hadn't approved. Stephanie hired someone to repaint the dining room without asking, removed the wallpaper Margaret had chosen, replaced it with something she called eggshell contemporary. "It'll really brighten up the space," she said. "Increase the home's value." "I'm not selling," I told her. "Of course not. But it's good to maintain the property value. You want to leave Emma and David something worthwhile, don't you?" That night, I heard them talking in their room. "The vents in this old house carry sound better than you'd think." "We need to move faster," Stephanie's voice drifted down. "He's stubborn." "We talked about this," Brandon said. "We have to be patient. Build his trust." "Patient doesn't pay our credit card bills, Brandon. We're $38,000 in debt." I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. 38,000. Brandon had never mentioned money problems. The next morning, I went to my bank, just to check my accounts, make sure everything was in order. The teller, Janet, had known me for 15 years. "Mr. Patterson, did you want to add someone to your accounts? Someone was in last week asking about the process." My chest tightened. "Who?" "Your nephew. He said he wanted to help manage your finances, make sure bills were paid on time. I told him he'd need to come in with you and provide proper documentation." "I didn't authorize that." Janet's expression shifted to concern. "I didn't think so. That's why I wanted to confirm with you first before processing anything." "Thank you, Janet. Please don't add anyone to my accounts without me explicitly requesting it in person." "Of course, Mr. Patterson." I drove home slowly, mind racing. Brandon had tried to access my bank accounts, not asked me about it. Just went ahead and tried to do it. When I got home, Stephanie was measuring the living room windows. "What are you doing?" "Getting measurements for new curtains. These ones are ancient, very dated. Margaret made those curtains." "Oh." She didn't stop measuring. "Well, they're falling apart anyway." I went to my office, a small room off the kitchen where I kept my computer and important documents. The filing cabinet drawer was slightly open. I always closed it completely. Always. I checked inside. My files were there, but not in the order I kept them. Someone had been looking through them. That evening, I called my lawyer, James Chen. We'd served together in the fire department before he went to law school. "James, I need your advice. It's about my house." "What's going on, Will?" I told him everything. Brandon and Stephanie moving in, the changes, the bank incident, the disturbed files. James was quiet for a moment. "Will, do you have a will?" "A living trust?" "I have a will. Standard stuff. Everything split between Emma and David. But no living trust?" "No. Margaret and I talked about it, but never got around to it." "Will, listen to me carefully. If someone wanted to challenge your will, claim you weren't of sound mind when you made it, they could tie up your estate for years. But with a living trust, your assets transfer immediately to your designated beneficiaries. No probate, no contest period. You think Brandon would challenge my will? I think you need to protect yourself. Can you come to my office tomorrow? We'll set up a trust. It's not complicated, just a basic framework." "How long does it take?" "If we do it tomorrow, I can have it filed by Friday. But Will, don't tell anyone you're doing this. Not until it's finalized." I agreed to meet him at 10 a.m. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to Brandon and Stephanie moving around upstairs. At midnight, I heard them come downstairs, whispering. I held still, barely breathing. They went into my office. I waited 5 minutes, then quietly got up, crept to the hallway. The office door was ajar, light spilling out. "Has to have the deed somewhere," Stephanie was saying. "It's probably in the safe deposit box at the bank," Brandon replied. "Can you access it?" "Not without him. But I've been thinking, if we can get him to make me power of attorney, just for financial matters, I could handle everything. Tell him it's for convenience, in case something happens to him. And then, we convince him to sign the house over to me, for estate planning purposes. Tell him it'll save Emma and David from inheritance taxes." My hands clenched into fists. Stephanie continued, "What about him? We can't just kick him out." "We don't have to. We'll put him in a care home. There's that place in Surrey, Evergreen Manor. It's not expensive, $3,000 a month. We'll tell Emma and David it's for his own safety, that he's not managing well on his own." "Will they believe that?" They're on the other side of the world. They'll believe what we tell them. And once the house is in my name, we can sell it. This property is worth at least $2.5 million, even after the mortgage payoff and selling costs. We clear $2 million easy. Split it, pay off our debts, buy something modest, invest the rest. Something in my chest cracked. This was Brandon, the boy I'd raised, planning to steal my home and warehouse me in some facility. I backed away silently, returned to my room, lay there until dawn. The next morning, I acted normal, made breakfast, asked about their plans for the day. "Actually, Uncle Will," Brandon said, "I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been thinking about your finances, making sure everything's organized. Have you considered setting up power of attorney? Just in case something happens, someone could pay your bills, handle things." I sipped my coffee. "I'll think about it. Also, my buddy Mike is an estate planning specialist. He mentioned that transferring property before death can save a lot in taxes. We should talk to him." "Maybe," I said non-committally. Stephanie jumped in. "It's really something to consider, Uncle Will. You want to make sure Emma and David get the most out of your estate, right?" "Of course." I met James at his office at 10 a.m. sharp. "I need everything locked down," I told him. "Living trust, power of attorney documents naming Emma and David, not Brandon. And I want to make sure no one can contest this." James nodded. "We'll make it ironclad. I'll also draft a letter documenting your current mental state, your reasons for these decisions. We'll have it witnessed and notarized." "How fast can we do this?" "I can have documents ready by tomorrow afternoon. We'll need 2 witnesses for the trust signing. I'll bring my neighbors, Frank and Dorothy. They've known me 30 years. The next day, I signed everything. The living trust transferred ownership of the house to the trust, with Emma and David as beneficiaries upon my death. I retained right to live there for the rest of my life. Power of attorney went to Emma, with David as backup. James sealed everything in his office safe. The trust is filed with the province. It's official. No one can touch this house. I felt something loosen in my chest. "Thank you, James. Will, you need to tell them, soon, before they do something drastic." "I will. I'm just figuring out how." That decision was made for me 2 days later. I came home from grocery shopping to find Stephanie on the phone in the living room. She didn't notice me come in. "Yes, Evergreen Manor. I'm calling about availability. My uncle needs assisted living. He's 64, relatively healthy, but showing signs of confusion, memory issues. We're concerned about him living alone." "Well, he's not alone now, but we can't stay forever. We have our own lives. How much is the monthly rate?" And what's the waiting list like?" I stood frozen in the doorway, grocery bags in hand. She turned, saw me, didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, hanging up. "Uncle Will, you're home early." "Memory issues?" I said quietly. "Confusion?" "I was just exploring options. For the future. You're not getting any younger, and get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house. Both of you. Now." Brandon appeared from upstairs. "Uncle Will, what's going on?" "You tell me, Brandon. Tell me about your plan to steal my house, to put me in a care home so you can sell this property and pay off your $38,000 in credit card debt." His face went white. "I don't know what you're—" "I heard you 3 nights ago, in my office, planning the whole thing." Stephanie's expression hardened. "You were spying on us? In my own house? This is my house." "Actually," Stephanie said, voice turning cold, "we've been living here for 2 months. We've contributed to maintenance, utilities, upkeep. We have tenant rights. You can't just throw us out." "Watch me." Brandon held up his hands. "Uncle Will, please. Let's talk about this. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I heard exactly what you said. Both of you. Get out." "We need 30 days' notice," Stephanie said. "That's the law in BC. Tenants' rights." I pulled out my phone. "You want to discuss the law? I can call the RCMP right now. Attempted fraud. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Brandon's shoulders slumped. "Uncle Will, you have until tomorrow morning. Take your things and leave." And if we don't? Stephanie challenged. Then I call my lawyer, the police, and Emma, and David. I'll tell them everything, every detail of your plan. I saw the calculation in Stephanie's eyes. She grabbed Brandon's arm. Come on, let's pack. They were gone by 8 p.m. Brandon left a note on the kitchen table. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this way. I was desperate. Stephanie convinced me. That's not an excuse. I know what we did was wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me. I crumpled the note and threw it away. The house felt empty again. But it was a different kind of empty. This wasn't the lonely silence after Margaret died. This was the quiet of something broken that couldn't be fixed. I called Emma that night. Dad, is everything okay? I told her everything. She was silent for a long time. Dad, I'm so sorry. We should have been there. We should have. You have your own life. I don't blame you. We're coming to visit next month. David and I have already been talking about it. And Dad, we want you to come stay with us. Alternate between Australia and England. 6 months each. You shouldn't be alone. I'm not alone. I have friends here. My life. Margaret's garden. Then we'll come more often. Every 3 months. I promise. After we hung up, I walked through the house, touched Margaret's reading chair, back in its proper place, looked at her photos on the mantel, stood in the garden as the sun set over the Pacific. I thought about Brandon, about the little boy who used to help Margaret plant bulbs, who'd cried at her funeral, who'd called me every week after she died. When had he changed? Or had he always been capable of this? And I just never wanted to see it. 3 weeks later, I got a call from James. Will, you need to hear this. Brandon filed a petition claiming you're mentally incompetent. He's trying to get guardianship. My blood ran cold. Can he do that? He can try, but he won't succeed. We have documentation of your mental competency. The letter I drafted, the witnesses, the fact that you successfully set up a complex legal trust. Plus, he'd need medical evidence, which he doesn't have. What do I do? Nothing. Let him waste his money on a lawyer. The petition will be dismissed. But Will, this means he's not giving up. You need to be careful. I hired a security company to install cameras around the property, changed all the locks, set up a monitoring service that would alert me to any unusual activity. 2 months passed. No word from Brandon. Emma and David visited, spent 3 weeks with me. We scattered some of Margaret's ashes in the garden, beneath her Japanese maple. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I got an email from a lawyer I didn't know. Dear Mr. Patterson, I represent your nephew, Brandon Whitfield, in a matter concerning property located at 2847 Seaside Drive, West Vancouver. Mr. Whitfield claims he has a verbal agreement with you regarding future ownership of said property, entered into in August of last year. He is prepared to pursue this claim in civil court unless we can reach an amicable settlement. Please contact our office to discuss. I forwarded it to James. He called me 20 minutes later. Will, this is harassment. There's no verbal agreement, no documentation. He's desperate. Let me handle this. James sent a response outlining the living trust, the power of attorney documents, and a warning that further harassment would result in a restraining order. The emails stopped, but I knew Brandon hadn't given up. Stephanie wouldn't let him. I was right. 3 months later, I received a certified letter. Brandon was suing me for compensation for services rendered during the time he and Stephanie lived with me. He claimed they'd provided round-the-clock care, property maintenance, and financial management services worth $12,000 per month. They wanted $72,000 for the 6 months they'd lived here. James laughed when I showed him. This is absurd. They lived rent-free. You have bank records showing you paid all utilities, all expenses. This won't go anywhere. But I have to respond? I'll respond. And I'm going to recommend you file a countersuit for attempted fraud and emotional distress. I don't want their money. I just want them to leave me alone. Then we'll file for a restraining order. No contact, no proximity to your property. If he violates it, he goes to jail. The judge granted the restraining order. Brandon's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he couldn't refile. The judge called it frivolous and vexatious, and ordered Brandon to pay my legal fees. That should have been the end. But 6 months later, I got a call from the West Vancouver police. "Mr. Patterson, we have your nephew Brandon Whitfield in custody. He was found on your property at 2:30 a.m., attempting to access your house through a basement window." My heart hammered. "Is he still there?" "He's at the station. We need you to come down and provide a statement." I drove to the police station, hands shaking on the wheel. Brandon sat in an interview room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Stephanie wasn't with him. The officer explained. He claims he left personal property in the house and was just trying to retrieve it, but given the restraining order and the time of night, we're treating this as attempted break-in. "What personal property?" I asked. Brandon looked up at me. His eyes were red, exhausted. "The truth? I don't know what I was doing, Uncle Will. Stephanie left me, took half of everything, and moved to Toronto with some guy she met online. I lost my job. I'm being evicted from my apartment. I thought maybe you'd help me, like you always did when I was a kid." Something in me wanted to soften. This was still the boy I'd helped raise. But I remembered his voice in my office. "We'll put him in a care home." "You tried to steal my house," I said quietly. "You were going to lock me away in a facility and sell the home. Margaret and I spent our lives building." I know. I was desperate and stupid, and Stephanie convinced me it was the only way, and I'm not making excuses. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm asking you, please. I have nowhere else to go." The officer looked at me. "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Brandon, really looked at him. He wasn't the confident man who'd shown up at Margaret's funeral. He was broken, desperate, but that didn't erase what he'd tried to do. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges." Brandon's face crumpled. "Uncle Will, you made your choices, Brandon. Now you live with them." He was charged with attempted breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, sentenced to 6 months probation and ordered to attend counseling. I haven't seen him since. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have given him another chance. He was family, after all. The closest thing I had to a son for many years. But then I remember standing in the hallway, listening to him plan my future in a care home like I was a problem to be solved. I remember Stephanie measuring my windows, erasing Margaret's presence from our home. I remember the coldness in their voices when they talked about selling the property, counting the money. Family isn't just blood. It's trust, respect, love. They broke all of that. Emma visits every 3 months now. David every 6. They're talking about moving back to Canada, maybe settling in Victoria. Close enough to visit regularly, far enough to have their own lives. I tend Margaret's garden. The roses need deadheading, the hydrangeas pruning. The Japanese maple is thriving. The house is quiet, but it's mine. Fully, legally, irrevocably mine. I'm 66 now. I think about mortality more than I used to. When I die, Emma and David will inherit this property through the trust. They'll sell it or keep it, their choice. But it'll be their choice, not stolen from them by someone who thought they were too far away to notice. Last week, I got a letter from Brandon. Not addressed to me, addressed to Emma, she called. "Dad, Brandon wrote to me. He says he's in a recovery program, working on himself. He wants to apologize to you, to make amends. What do you think I should do?" "I think that's entirely up to you. But Dad, you don't owe him anything. You gave him everything when he was growing up. He repaid you by trying to steal your home. He's sick, Em. Addiction, probably. Mental health issues. That doesn't erase what he did. You can forgive him if you want, but you don't have to let him back in your life." I keep the letter in my desk drawer. Haven't opened it. Maybe someday I will. Or maybe some betrayals are too deep to forgive. I've learned that protecting yourself isn't cruel. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. And sometimes the family you choose, friends, neighbors, the community you build, is stronger than blood. Margaret's reading chair sits in the living room. Her photos are on the mantel. Her garden blooms every spring. This is my home, and I protected it. Even if it cost me my nephew, I'd do it again.